What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another Pokemon TCG Pocket video. So I've been hearing a lot about these Pokemon Pocket tournaments. A lot of people have been entering them, using them as data references, saying these are the best meta decks. These are the decks that performed well within these tournaments. Well, you know what? I decided, okay, let me enter one of these tournaments and let me see what I can do. So first off, most, if not all of these Pokemon Pocket tournaments are coming from play.limitlesstcg.com. I'll go ahead and leave a link to the website down in the description below. It's a really cool website with a lot of information on decks and metadata. It has a deck builder and you can sign up for different tournaments, and the whole process was pretty smooth, so definitely recommend checking it out. Now, I joined this tournament, which was Pocket League number 7. Now, it is a bit on the smaller side. I believe it was just under 200 players. Now, that is not a huge sample size compared to some of these other tournaments with 1,000 or maybe even closer to 2,000 players, but I think it's still a decent sample size nonetheless. I ended up finishing with a 7-1 record. Now, technically, yes, it is 7-2, but that's because this tournament was going on for 5 hours for the Swiss rounds. So after the Swiss rounds, I made it to top cut, and I was like, okay, I gotta drop. I gotta go. I got other things to do. So I unfortunately had to drop the first round of the top cut. So I potentially could have gone further, or maybe I would have just lost. Who knows? And just in case, if anyone doesn't believe me, because they could just be like, well, you could have just lost the game and said that you dropped, right? But no, this is actually what happened. So this is what the tournament looks like when you're actually in. You report your wins and your losses, right? There's also a chat where you could chat with your opponent and call a judge. My opponent checked in. I said, hi, I have to drop. Good game. Requested a judge. Judge reported the game for me as a loss, and that was it. So yeah, I dropped once I reached top cut because after 5 hours, I just said I had to dip out of here. So what I wanted to do real quick is kind of just look over my deck, my opponent's decks, the matchups real quick. I just wanted to speak to my firsthand experience because there are a lot of YouTubers, I mean, myself included, right, that'll say like, oh, this deck performed really well in this tournament. But you don't really know like the nitty gritty until you're actually in there in the tournament, right? Like you're in the trenches. So I got in, I dug in the trenches, man, and I grinded this out. I mean, I'm pretty proud of myself. This was actually the second tournament I did. The first one I went 3-2. And then 2 losses was not enough to make the top cut, so I just dropped right away. But for this one, I went 7-1. Technically, sure, if you want to count this loss when I dropped 7-2, sure. But either way, I made it to top cut. And overall, even dropping in the first round of the top cut, I've got 10th place out of about 200 people. And then in the Swiss rounds, I got 5th place. So first off, let's talk about the deck I use, which is Pikachu EX. Yes, this is a meta deck, but it is a tournament setting, so it is a more competitive setting. So of course, I'm going to be playing one of the best decks, right? But I will say, I think Pikachu EX is probably the third most popular deck overall right now in the current meta, behind Mewtwo in first and Gyarados in second. I think most people would agree that these are the 3 best decks right now, with Celebi kind of lurking around the corner, kind of coming up right in 4th place, maybe sneaking its way into the top 3. I actually did a video on this almost exact deck a couple weeks ago. The only change I made was I had one of the new Sniper Electabuzzes. I removed that and put in a second Zapdos EX. I feel like the Electabuzz was just too slow, doing 40 damage for 2 energy. Yes, it was nice when we didn't find the Zebstrika, but I felt this deck was consistent enough that I was able to pull off the Zebstrika very often. So that is essentially the same deck I use, but put in a second Zapdos instead. So let's break it down card by card real quick. I want to start off with Blitzel and Zebstrika. I would argue that Zebstrika is actually the most important card in this deck because it completely counters Gyarados decks. Being able to snipe that Magikarp on the bench for an easy 30 damage, an easy 1 point, this made the Gyarados matchup way more favorable for me. So having the Zebstrika was just really, really good. It felt good going first when you can evolve first into the Zebstrika. And then if you do some damage with Pikachu, your opponent retreats back to the bench. You can still snipe them with Zebstrika. So I would actually say Zebstrika is the MVP of the deck. I think if you're looking to play a Pikachu EX deck right now, Zebstrika and Blitzel are an absolute must to of right now in the current meta. And then we have Pikachu EX, of course, the namesake of the deck. This is just one of the best basic EX Pokemon in the game, being able to do up to 90 damage for just 2 energy. So my game plan was generally, if I'm going first, I'm looking for Blitzel to evolve into Zebstrika. If I'm going second, I typically want to look for Pikachu EX since I get energy on my first turn, and then I can start attacking for potentially 90 damage on my second turn with Pikachu EX. And then 90 damage, 2 hits is going to be clearing basically any Pokemon in the game. So Pikachu EX is our main attacker in the deck. Not too much else to say about it except that it's a really good card. And then we have 2 copies of Zapdos EX. So Zapdos is really good for a couple different reasons. One, it's a basic Pokemon that we can just put on the bench to buff up our Pikachu EX. 2, it does have 130 HP, which is the most HP out of any Pokemon in our deck. So there are times where we might just need to stall for an extra turn, and we can use Zapdos as a tank. It does peck for 1 energy for 20 damage. That's nice. Sometimes just being able to get a little bit of chip damage in. And then the Thundering Hurricane ability for 3 energy. It's going to flip 4 coins and do 50 damage for each head. I think I only use this move maybe only in 1 or 2 of my matches. It was pretty rare that I actually used that move. That was kind of more like a Hail Mary sort of move that was like my last resort that I would rely on. So you're not going to be using that move every game, but it's definitely nice to have when you have nothing else to rely on. And then it retreats for 1, which is really nice. Every Pokemon in this deck retreats for 1, which is good, which is why we're running double X speed. And something to note as well with Zapdos EX is that it is weak to lightning, whereas every other Pokemon in my deck is weak to fighting Pokemon. And lastly, but certainly not least, we got 2 Joltik and 2 Galvantula. This card is a sleeper hit. Let me tell you, I played against Mewtwo EX and being able to trap them with the Galvantula and then they can't retreat and then you knock them out for 2 points. It is so powerful. Galvantula is an amazing card. This card's also really good going second as well. Joltik is a little bit of a liability with the 40 HP, so it can die in 1 hit to things like Farfetch. But if you're going second, you can put an energy attack for 30 damage. And then on your next turn, you put another energy on it, evolve into Galvantula, deal 70 damage, and you're trapping your opponent's Pokemon. So Galvantula was sort of like my checkmate card. When I had to trap a certain Pokemon and just lock them in to where my opponent had no outs to win the game, Galvantula was the MVP in those scenarios. We're also running 2 Sabrinas in this deck. I believe 2 Sabrina is absolutely essential, especially with the Galvantula version of this build, because your opponent's going to want to retreat their weak Pokemon. And then again, coming back to the Zebstrika as well, when they retreat their weak Pokemon, you can snipe them with the Zebstrika, or you can do Sabrina and then trap them with the Galvantula, which is very powerful. And for the rest of the cards in the deck, we got 2 Professor's Research, 2x speed. Like I said before, every Pokemon in this deck has a retreat cost of 1, so 2x speed makes sense here. And we wanted to just deal damage as fast as we possibly can, right? We're not running any potions here because we're not really worried about our Pokemon dying. I mean, we are, but we want to be the ones putting the pressure on our opponent. We don't want to be playing defensive with this deck. We want to be playing a very aggressive, and then 2 Pokeballs, of course, to draw our basic Pokemon. I think this list served me well. If there's one change I think I might make, and I might have to experiment with this, is I would maybe take out 1 Joltik and 1 Galvantula for 1 Dedenne and 1 Giovanni. I know I said Galvantula was MVP in some scenarios, but then there were other games where Galvantula wasn't really doing much. It was just kind of on the bench, serving as another basic Pokemon to power up my Pikachu EX. And there is the fact that Joltik has 40 HP. It can be a liability against Greninja decks. If you just have a Joltik on your bench, then a Greninja's Water Shuriken can KO a Joltik in 2 hits, which is not good. So Joltik and Galvantula I think are very good, but it might be worth it to cut one of each from this deck for Dedenne and Giovanni. The Dedenne, I know I said before in one of my other videos, I don't love the card. I still don't love it, but I think 8 basic Pokemon is the perfect amount, so that way you can get the 90 damage more consistently with your Pikachu EX. Sometimes you just need to flip a coin, get heads, and paralyze your opponent's Pokemon to buy you an extra turn to win the game, right? And it's not always going to work, but hey, sometimes you just need that extra turn to stall. And then Giovanni, I really want to fit one Giovanni, at least one in this deck, because our highest attack, not counting Zapdos EX's Thundering Hurricane, because it's very rare I did that ability, our highest attack is Pikachu EX's Circle Circuit, which is going to do a maximum of 90 damage. If we can just push that 90 damage to 100 with the Giovanni, that makes us reach 100 damage, and that is actually a really important breakpoint in the game because that's going to kill Druddigon cleanly in 1 hit. The problem I kind of ran into is we don't really have a way to get rid of the Druddigon cleanly in 1 hit. I don't like attacking into Druddigon multiple times. That's just giving my opponents free value. But in those instances, I did go against a Druddigon. I just put in the Zebstrika, right? And I don't even care about the Druddigon. I'm just hitting my opponent's bench with the Zebstrika, and they can't do anything about it. So in those instances where my opponents had Druddigon, I would just play Zebstrika. But again, sometimes that 100 damage breakpoint would be really nice. I did run into some people playing Tauros as well, the new one that deals 120 damage to EX Pokemon, which one-shots Pikachu EX, right? So that Pokemon has 100 HP as well. If I could one-shot that Tauros with a Pikachu EX and a Giovanni, that would be very nice as well. So overall, I really like this deck list. Those are the only couple changes I might consider doing. I may have to experiment with those, but overall, this deck is really solid. And taking a look at my matchups real quick, my only loss was in the first round, actually going against a Scolipede Weezing deck. Now, this deck just had my number. They played really well. I think what was the challenge for me was the Weezing. The Weezing made things very difficult because Weezing has 110 HP. Again, I don't really have a clean way to get rid of that Weezing in 1 hit. Yes, I could use Pikachu EX, hit it for 90 damage, and leave it with 20 HP to clean up the next turn, but they were playing 2 Koga in their deck, so it kind of just felt like a waste. I didn't want to attack into the Weezing when I knew they would just pull it back with Koga, and they were playing the Scolipede as well and the Tauros, so yeah, they just had all the tools to shut down my deck. Then looking at the rest of my matchups, round 2 was a Pidgeot EX deck. I had the type advantage there with Pidgeot being weak to lightning type Pokemon, and my opponent was playing Druddigon as well. So again, so I could just negate that with my Zebstrika, play around that. Round 3, my opponent was playing Mew, Druddigon, and Greninja. Kind of the same thing here was that the Druddigon, I don't really care about it, right? I just put Zebstrika in and snipe the back bench, and then I have the advantage typing on the Greninja. And one interaction that was really cool as well is with the Mew with genome hacking, they can copy your Pikachu, but it's not going to do anything because Pikachu EX's Circle Circuit deals damage for each benched electric type Pokemon. So they run no electric type Pokemon in their deck, so their Mew is essentially doing 0 damage with genome hacking. So I thought that was really cool. I just kind of leaned more into the Pikachu and made their Mew practically worthless since they weren't running Psychic Energy as well. So their Mew just did nothing basically once I had Pikachu EX in. Round 4 is when I played a mirror match. I will say here, I think my opponent's deck list wasn't that good, to be honest, and no disrespect to any of my opponents. I think they all played very well, but I think there was a big mistake with their deck list where they added a Farfetch'd. This was my opponent's deck list in the mirror match, and it's pretty similar to mine, But I think the big mistake is the Farfetch'd here, and I guess the Electabuzz as well. I mean, Electabuzz is not terrible, like it's fine, but having the Farfetch, like I get it, it makes sense. You want to be aggressive and deal the 40 damage, right? But with the Farfetch, like you're hindering your Pikachu EX because your Pikachu EX only scales with lightning type Pokemon. And since Farfetch'd is a normal type Pokemon, you basically just don't want to put him into play. Or if you do, you just want to deal some damage with him and then just you want him to get KO'd, right? So I think having Farfetch in this deck was a mistake. Again, no disrespect to my opponent. I think they played as best they could, but that's just what I think. So the first 4 rounds, I would say, weren't too big of a sweat for me, not including the loss. The loss did kind of suck, but you know what? I powered through it. I will say the final 4 rounds of the Swiss rounds were definitely the toughest matchups. I played against 2 Mewtwo decks, a Gyarados deck, and a Charizard EX deck. The Mewtwo matchups in particular were definitely the most difficult matchups for me. Every single move I made had to be precise. I just could not misplay at all. I could not make a mistake and allow my opponent to capitalize on it. So I tried to play that as best as I could and trap their Mewtwo with the Galvantula when I could. And then for the Gyarados matchup, again, it was really just kind of just trying to snipe the Magikarp before the Gyarados even got on the line. And then if it does get online, we have the type advantage. And then we have Sabrina if we want to swap out the Gyarados and then trap something else with the Galvantula. The Charizard matchup actually wasn't too bad for me. It was really just me trying to rush down my opponent as fast as possible, because the way I saw it was they want to start off with Moltres EX. They want to ramp Fire Energy. Moltres is weak to Lightning, so I just want to get my Pikachu EX online as fast as possible, rush down the Moltres so he can't get a whole ton of energy from it, and then we can keep on attacking before he even gets Charizard or Arcanine online. I don't think he actually even got Charizard online. Charizard's going to take a little bit longer because it's a stage 2 evolution and requires 4 energy for its 200 damage attack, whereas Arcanine is a stage 1 evolution just requiring 3 energy for its attack. So my strategy with this matchup was basically just to rush them down as fast as possible before they could get their big Pokemon online, and that's what paid off in the end. So that's it. That is my tournament experience with Pokemon Pocket so far. I just kind of wanted to share my experience, share my deck list, share my matchups and all the kind of knowledge that I took away from this tournament. Honestly, I could probably yap a whole lot more and go over each game in depth, but that would be a very, very long video, as just the 8 Swiss rounds alone took about 5 hours. So yeah, it would be a very long video. But hey, if you're interested in a more deep dive tournament analysis video where I kind of play in these tournaments and maybe I take a match or 2 from each tournament and kind of dissect them, you know, turn by turn, let me know if that's something you would be interested in, and yeah, I could definitely do that. I'm going to leave a link down to the deck I used in the description down below. Again, I think this deck is absolutely solid. I might just make a couple of changes with it, but if you just want to copy paste it, hop into a tournament or hop onto ladder either, you're definitely going to get some wind with it. And shout out to play.limitlesstcg.com. Once again, I'll leave a link down to the website down below. I was really surprised with how seamless the tournament experience was. Everything was pretty smooth. So yeah, if you definitely want to hop into some Pokemon TCG Pocket tournaments, even just for fun, like I would recommend, even if you just want to do it for fun, it's a very fun experience. It's a very different experience from ladder, being able to see your opponent's deck, and it's a best 2 out of 3. I probably should have mentioned that before, but it's a best 2 out of 3 format. At least this tournament was. So it's a very, very fun experience. And hey, if you made it to the end of the video, I appreciate you. If you're interested in joining my Discord server, I have the link for it down in the description below. If you want to chat Pokemon Pocket, Pokemon video games in general, or any other video games or whatever, you know, go ahead, join the Discord. Link will be in the description below. I would love to see you there. And thank you guys so much for watching. Let me know if you like this type of video. This was a little bit different format for me, just kind of going over my tournament matches, my tournament deck, and analysis and things like that. So thank you guys so much for watching. I appreciate you, and I will see you all in the next one. Later.